I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. As my longtime viewers know, I try and paint a pretty balanced picture of real estate in Vancouver and investing in general, whether that's the stock market or buying a Vancouver condo, either as a principal residence or as an investment. So I try and paint both sides of the story. Markets don't go up forever. My philosophy, my strategy that I've always tried to impart on my viewers here is the need to have a long-term horizon when you buy real estate. If it's a principal residence, buy it and at least have an 8 to 10 year holding period. You might buy that condo tomorrow and the price goes on a roll here indefinitely. When it finally does take a 10 or 20% correction, you're still up 30 or 40%. So you never get to a point where the condo was worth less than what you paid for it. But you've got other situations where you can buy a condo, especially in the late innings that we're in right now, and 2 years from now, we get a correction and it's worth $50,000 less than what you paid. Now, I've done blogs several times before over the last 6 or 7 years, how I've bought many condos, many detached homes, townhomes over the years, either as principal residences or as investment properties. And I did a blog a while back on how I did an inventory a couple of years ago. I went back to into my filing cabinet and pulled out all the information on what I had paid for these units and then what the price appreciation or decrease did over the next 5 to 10 years. And basically half of all the homes I have purchased over the last 30 years, half have at one point or another been worth less than what I paid for it. Now that drop in price usually occurs within the first couple of years, 2 to 3 years. I think the longest I've ever gone owning a property where at the end of the year it was worth slightly less than what I had originally paid was about 6 years. And that's why I always tell people that 8 to 10 year holding period. 8 to 10 is a pretty safe bet that you've got enough time there to ride out any short-term volatility. The other thing is after 8 to 10 years, especially with the interest rates we've got now, you're doing a fairly good amount of damage to your principal payment every year there as well. So after 10 years on a $500,000 mortgage, you've already chipped off $100 grand right there just in your mortgage payments. So 8 to 10 years is always that magical holding period I give people. Markets go up and they go down. We're in the late innings here of an unprecedented market run here. So we are overdue for what I call a run-of-the-mill correction, 10, 15, maybe something a little more severe, 20%. So let me walk people through, and I've got to reaffirm this every year with people because I think people lose sight of this, especially with the market. When the market goes up 20 and 25% every year for the last couple of years, they think the good times are never going to end, and this is normal, and it's not normal. So a natural market correction is going to happen here. Now, it's not going to happen as a result of these new NDP taxes. That's not going to be it. Eventually, if we get a handle on the foreign capital coming in through, and that's going to have to be done via Ottawa and the Chinese banks and CRA, and involve a lot more people than the provincial government. If we ever get a handle on that, or get a handle on some of the abuses with the principal resident exemption that I've blogged about, perhaps they curtail this Quebec investor program, which is minting thousands of buyers with their permanent residency status, so they're not foreign buyers, every year that are coming into Vancouver. So that will definitely have a cooling on the market, and prices will come down if they get a handle on those, if and when. But a market will correct naturally on its own. And if that happens in 2018 or 2019 or 2020, I don't know. But what'll happen essentially is we hit a glass ceiling. Eventually, with the low interest rates we've got, you can only afford so much. I'm already now seeing, which I never thought I would see, I'm already starting to see 1-bedroom units priced at $1 million, which if you asked me 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said you're crazy. So eventually it gets to a point where the cheap money, it can only take you so far. The market will start to cool. You get a couple of interest rate hikes, and that will accelerate it. For every quarter-point interest rate hike, it's going to be like a cold bucket of water on the market. If we get 3 or 4 of those over the next couple of years, it will definitely cool the market because affordability will drop. Real estate is inverted to interest rates, as everybody knows. When money is cheap, prices are high. When money gets expensive, prices come down, just like a teeter-totter. So eventually this market will cool. I want to point out a few things here though. The other thing I should mention too is, of course, what a natural correction will look like is you get some interest rate hikes, inventory builds up, prices start to level off for a few months, inventory continues to build. That's when you start to see prices come down. That's what a natural correction will look like. The other thing, of course, so there's other intangibles out there that I want to discuss here. You know, in downtown Vancouver right now, I see a lot of rental buildings that they haven't built in decades in Vancouver. A lot of those are starting to come online over the next couple of years. These aren't going to be cheap though, remember that. These rental buildings are going to be market rental, the vast majority of them. So a one bedroom is going to be $1,800 to $2,000. A two bedroom unit, fairly basic unit, might be $2,700 a month. But that will have an effect on the market. As some of that inventory starts to come online in the next few years, it could have a little bit of a softening effect in the condo market. Because you've got more inventory now, rents might start to moderate or even go down for the first time in a lot of years, and prices will follow suit. So again, that's kind of what a natural price correction looks like. But the other thing I want to point out to people here, I get calls and emails from people every single week. And again, it's that they're so used to having the prices going up 20% a year every year for the last 2, 3, 4 years now, that they think it's normal. And they'll call me up and say, oh, and I'm thinking about buying a pre-sale in this building. What do you think of it? And what do you think I could sell it for in 2 years? I want to flip it. I don't want to close on it. I don't even have the money to close on it. I got to put 15% down or 20% down, and I'm going to assign it or flip it just before it's ready to complete. And you know, I have to tell them that, listen, it might work out for you. It'd be great. You might buy it today at $500,000. 3 years from now, when you're ready to complete, you can sell it for $575,000. But there's also a very good chance that that unit might be down to $450,000 3 years from now because of what I just talked about: interest rate hikes, inventory building, getting a handle on the foreign buyers. Who knows? Eventually, it's just fatigue. Buyer fatigue sets in eventually. Markets won't go up forever. They just end up stalling eventually. So you have to remember that markets don't go up. And as I said, half the units I've bought, half the homes I've bought at one point or another were worth less than what I paid for it. Now, was I worried about it? No. They were either a principal residence, so I was living in it, so I wasn't concerned about what the price was. It was my home. What the price was worth 2 or 3 years after I bought it, it didn't bother me at all. Or it was an investment unit. I bought it, put a tenant in it. He was paying me $2,000 or $2,300 or $2,400 a month. I could care less if the price of the unit went down $50,000 from what I paid for it. As long as I've got a tenant in there and I'm collecting rent, it'll correct. And it always does. And of course, as I say, the longest one I had was about 6 years, and then it was off to the races from there. Some I've had, though, I've bought and I've never looked back on. It's appreciated. There's been a few corrections here, but never enough to put it back down to less than what I paid for it. But this is how a normal market works. And the market has not been normal the last 2 or 3 years. This kind of price appreciation on Vancouver condos or New West condos or Burnaby or Brentwood, this isn't normal. It's not a normal situation here, having 20 and 25% increases year over year. So people need to realize that. One other thing I'll tell you, I've had a few people call me, not one, not two, but 3 in the last month, who are telling me about pre-sales. One pre-sale in particular, I'm not going to mention it here. All 3 told me the same story. They went in, wanted to know my opinion on this building, and had been told by the sales reps that, hey, buy it. Don't worry about closing on it. Here's our assignment fees. It's going to cost you $5,000, but you can flip it or assign it before you complete on it. It's almost like saying, pay $40,000 today for some Canucks season tickets because they're going to make the playoffs and have a deep playoff run into the Stanley Cup next year, and you'll be able to sell your playoff tickets and make all your money back on the $40,000 subscription fee. You know, the chances of that happening, you know, there's a chance. Canucks could make a playoff run next year, but I wouldn't bet on it. Just like I wouldn't buy a pre-sale unit and 3 years from now bet on the fact that it's going to be worth $50,000 or $100,000 more than what you paid for it. So that's why whenever you're buying a unit, if it's a principal residence, rather than selling it as a flip, if I was the sales rep, I would be telling people, listen, what do you want to buy? Is this going to be a principal residence or an investment? If it's a principal residence, fantastic. Lay down your 20%. It's going to be complete in 3 years. I would tell them the truth. There is a chance in 3 years from now the market could change. Markets go up and down, but that's okay for you guys. You love the building, you like the unit, you like the views. You're going to live in it as your principal residence. Who cares what it's worth when you complete on it? Live in it, enjoy it for the next 8 to 10 years, and then I can guarantee to you that it'll be worth more than what you paid for it. If the guy was an investor, I would tell him, you're paying the price today. When you close on this, it could be worth less, but see your plan through. You've got the money to close on it, yes. Put a tenant in it. The market will recover. But where it gets dangerous here, and I've done blogs on this before, there are people out there that are buying these units pre-sale, and I'm not a fan of pre-sale anyways. I think there's better value in the tangible market. But if you want to buy a pre-sale, that's fine. You'll still do fine on it as long as you keep it long enough. But there's just better value out there in the tangible market. I've done lots of blogs on it. But if that's your plan, you better be able to complete on it and see it through. And I know for a fact, it's crazy. There are people that are buying these and do not have the ability to close on them. They can scrape the 10 or 15 or 20% deposit schedule through, but they do not have $200,000 or $250,000 to lay down at time of completion. The end goal is we don't have to worry about it. I'm going to flip it anyways. And that is just crazy. And I want people to understand, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are these kind of things that are out there. They are not good, and chances are these people are going to get their heads handed to them. But don't paint the entire market with that. There's still lots of people, my clients, that are buying who have the ability to close on properties, even if they are pre-sale, and see it through, and you've insulated yourself against risk there. Because if you give it enough time, you'll do fine. But for anyone that's buying a place that can't complete on it or close on it or get the financing in 2 or 3 years, because remember, you can't qualify for the financing on a pre-sale. They won't touch you right now. You're going to have to wait 2 or 3 months before completion before you go in and get pre-approved or get approved for the mortgage. So you never want to be buying one of these pre-sales unless you are absolutely certain that you can close on it. And if the market's down, you're not in a position to have to sell. Because if you talk to Warren Buffett or any of these hedge fund managers, they'll always tell you the rule number one in the stock market is you never want to be in a position when a market is down or falling that you have to sell. That is the absolute worst. You're just locking in your losses. Buffett will tell you that in a down market, when people are panicking, that's when you want to be stepping in and being a buyer to scoop those bargains up. And what people are doing, some people, not all, some people are setting themselves up for horrendous failure here. They're buying these units and they don't even have the ability to complete on them. Maybe it'll work out for you. Maybe this market will continue on a roll here for another 3 years. I don't know. But we're in the late innings here. There's a good chance that, in 3 years from now on these pre-sales, it's worth $50,000 or $60,000 or $80,000 less than what you paid for it. You got to complete on it. If you can't, you're going to have to sell it and take the $100,000 loss, which is crazy. Be careful out there, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's some bad stuff out there, overpaid, people overcommitting, overextending themselves. But real estate can do fantastic things for you as long as you have the right mindset and the ability to buy and hold it. You remove all the risk. You really do. Markets are forgiving. They will correct if you give it enough time. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, I'll see you next time.